In recent years, people-to-people and cultural exchanges between China and Africa have shown a positive development trend in both breadth and depth, providing necessary supplement and support for the rapid development of political and economic relations between China and Africa. Now let's come to part 3. What does BRI mean for Uganda? I have been in Uganda for more than 3 years. My observation tells me that Uganda has 4 advantages in further deepening its cooperation with China. The stable political environment, that is the first. The second is rich natural and human resources. The third is good investment policies. The last is hardworking and intelligent people. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, last year was a milestone year in the history of China-Uganda relations. In June 2018, His Excellency Museveni visited China, during which our 2 heads of state reached a series of consensus and agreed to elevate China-Uganda relations to a comprehensive cooperative partnership. Based on our respective strengths and development needs, we are working closely in building synergy in our Belt and Road cooperation, including the implementation actions of the FOCAC Beijing Summit with Uganda Vision 2040 in our mind. We are focusing on further cooperation in trade, in industrial production capacity, infrastructure, industrial parks, skill transfer, job creation, etc., which will greatly enrich, broaden, and deepen our comprehensive cooperative partnership, making our mutually beneficial cooperation a pace-setter in China-Africa cooperation. Uganda is one of the important countries and stakeholder of the BRI, reaping tangible and substantial results from the 5 connectivities. On the front of policy connectivity, as I mentioned earlier, like the overwhelming majority of African countries, Uganda and China signed a memorandum of understanding on BRI cooperation, which was witnessed by our 2 presidents in September 2018. But our BRI cooperation have long begun. The policy coordination and the policy interactions between our 2 countries have been very well conducted. On the front of infrastructure connectivity, one outstanding and tangible fruit would be the Kampala-Entebbe Expressway, the Ugandan gateway to the world. With the launch of the expressway in 2018, the commuting time between Kampala and Entebbe has been reduced from more than 2 hours to just about 30 minutes. That, of course, is not a sole example. One may recall that around 1 year ago, Isimba hydropower plant was jointly commissioned by His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni and me. The Isimba hydropower plant, a major project in the China-Uganda cooperation, effectively added 183 megawatts to the national grid of Uganda. an increase of 18.6% to Uganda's power generation capacity. And we will not stop at that. The Karuma Dam, with its designed capacity of 600 megawatts, is already in its final age of construction. When completed, it will provide more power to the grid and will lower tariff for individuals as well as common people, for industries as well as common people of Uganda. I remember on May 9, 2018, the Right Honorable Prime Minister Uganda enumerates top 10 achievements that this term of NRM government has made. 4 of them are BRI cooperation, namely the KE Expressway, Isimba, Karuma, and the expansion of Entebbe International Airport. On the front of trade connectivity, which emphasizes the trade facilitation and industrial cooperation, the fruits of cooperation are also out there to be seen. There are 6 industrial parks in Uganda invested by Chinese entrepreneurs, namely Shandong Industrial Park in Luzira, Tiantang Industrial Park in Mkono, Liaoshen Industrial Park in Kapika, Uganda-China Free Zone of International Cooperation in Sekulu, Mobali Industrial Park, and the Kehong Agricultural Industrial Park in Luweero. Chinese investment ranking top of the foreign direct investment in Uganda has made great contribution to the industrialization of Uganda and created more than 80,000 local employment opportunities. The Goodwill Tile Factory, located in Liaoshen Industrial Park in Kapika, employs around 2,000 Ugandans and rewrites the record that Uganda cannot manufacture tiles by itself. All its products are proudly labeled Made in Uganda. Since the production started, the price of tiles in Uganda has dropped by 25%. The company helped save foreign exchange for Uganda. Foreign currency for Uganda was $35 million in input and $10 million in export annually. On the front of financial connectivity, needless to say, all the infrastructure and trade connectivities mentioned above would not be possible without joint financial resources from China and Uganda. Another case in point is the expansion and upgrading of Entebbe International Airport, which also used $200 million concessional loans from China. After completion of the first phase, the cargo center of the airport will have the capacity to handle up 150,000 metric tons of goods, more than double to the previous 69,000 metric tons. On the front of people-to-people exchange and connectivity, Ugandans also benefited broadly from the various kinds of China's foreign training and education opportunities under BRI cooperation. Since 2016, over 2,000 Ugandans have attended China-aided training courses and seminars in China. For the last 3 years, the Chinese government has sponsored over 216 Ugandan students to study in China for diplomas through Chinese government scholarship and other scholarship programs. The China-aided industrial skills and training and the production center situated in a 15-acre plot in Namanwei Industrial Park was commissioned on January 15th this year by His Excellency Museveni. It's a brand new building, and also it's a brand new complex in youth skills training in Uganda. Talking about the new virus, also called COVID-19 epidemic, I know all of you are very concerned with the situation of Ugandan students locked down in Wuhan. What I can assure you as Chinese ambassador is that China is doing everything possible to take care of them, using the same way as we take care of our own students. Last Saturday, I invited some parents and family members of those students to my embassy. I shared latest information with them and listened attentively to their concerns, difficulties, complaints, and anxious feelings. We took down all their requests one by one and immediately sent them back to China, to Wuhan, hoping a quickest feedback so that we can soon have a follow-up meeting to invite them to come back again to our embassy. By doing so, we want to say that we are with you in thick and thin, sunny or rainy, spring or winter. Yes, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? With the solidarity and the support of Uganda, we are sure that spring will come back very soon to see another boom in our people-to-people exchange. In fact, the embassy is currently handling the government scholarship application, which are ever vibrant as before. We have received several hundred applications already. Back to BRI cooperation between China and Uganda. All these tangible and substantial results have been achieved by BRI principles of consultation and cooperation for shared benefits. Of course, it is a work in process, and there are much more room for improvement, strengthening, and consolidation. To this effect, before I conclude today, I invite you, faculty and students of Makerere University, as well as general public of Uganda, to participate in BRI cooperation. I thank you for your good attention. Let's build the BRI cooperation like we built for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. A very big round of applause to His Excellency, the Ambassador. We thank you so much, Your Excellency, and now that every one of us has gotten the assurance about the coronavirus, our people are safe. So thank you very much for that assurance, Your Excellency. Right Honorable Prime Minister, I just want to let you know that Amity Stars are members of Parliament, and they have also come to this lecture. And we also have a representative of the Minister of Works and Transport. This is Engineer Samson Bagonza. Engineer Samson, you are welcome. With us also members of council, those with us kindly stand up for recognition. And we also have the principals of the colleges. They are also here with us. We have deans and directors. And among the directors, we have the director, the newly installed director of the Chinese Confucius Institute. That will stand anyway. And council members, I can see Dr. Sarah Sali, she's also here. And the rest, she's representing the rest. And many academic staff who are here, and I can see the chairperson of the Academic Staff Association who has represented the others. Of course, our moderator is right here. She's been introduced. I'll take this single honor now to move to another step of the program. And through to the levels at which we are. I also want to mention that he's been an academic staff in this institution. I think you can give a big applause to this. And he has to right through to the level of being our dear Chancellor right now. I now take this honor to invite him as the Chief Discussant, Professor Suma. You welcome.
Thank you very much. As the representative of the Right Honorable Prime Minister, Madame Kwichuni Grace, Your Excellency, the Ambassador of the People's Republic of China to Uganda, Honorable Ministers, Honorable Members of Parliament, the Chairperson of Council and members of Council, the Vice Chancellor, the Deputy Vice Chancellors, Principals and Deans, faculty members, and members of staff of Makerere University, distinguished visitors, students, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to be here this afternoon, to have the opportunity to listen to His Excellency. And I think for the first time now I have an idea what the Belt and Road Initiative is about. I've been hearing about it, reading about it, but not understanding it. Your Excellency, thank you for giving us the history, the background, the magnitude of it. I think now we can say that we are better informed as a result of what you have told us. Thank you very much. The topic of the Belt and Road Initiative is global, economically and historically, and I do not pretend to understand the full scope and breadth of the strategy, but I hope my remarks can help us to set the stage for further discussions today and in the future. Now, the Chinese government calls the initiative a bid to enhance regional connectivity, or is it global connectivity, and embrace a brighter future. Of course, We know that there have been many global attempts, some sense of universalism in the course of human history. And no doubt there are bound to be arguments about the Belt and Road Initiative, just as there are controversies surrounding many other global ideas. The stated objective by China to construct a unified large market and make full use of both international and domestic markets through cultural exchange and integration to enhance mutual understanding and trust among member nations. These are noble objectives. I think that perhaps in the case of Uganda, we are more tangibly familiar with the infrastructure aspect, maybe three aspects: infrastructure, trade, and capital, financial flows. He mentioned five connectivities: policy, infrastructure, trade, capital, flows, and understanding among peoples. I think I'll probably restrict, I'm an economist, so I'll speak about the areas that come naturally to me, namely infrastructure, of which he gave many important examples, trade, and capital flows. And having taken part in some of these issues in the last 30 years in Uganda, I want to say that we welcome, or should welcome, China on the global economic scene. Because, for example, when I was in the central bank as director of research and later as deputy governor, virtually 99% of our inflows, capital inflows, debts, grants, were coming from the West. They were dominated by the World Bank and IMF. But now, 20 years later, this domination has changed. We have a new effective competitor on the scene. Our needs for capital, for trade, for grants, for debt and so on, are no longer dominated by the West. I believe this should be a welcome event, and I think we should clap that we are not dependent on one side. Now, some of you may be too young to remember that when we became an independent country, it was time of the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States of America. And we had to walk a tight rope to show that you are not on either side. It was a complicated life. You had to make sure that you are neither communist nor capitalist. Non-aligned, we said. But of course, it was an impossible life. Sometimes we'd go to Washington, and sometimes we'd go to Moscow or even East Germany. But it was difficult. Now I see Some of you have read some of my writings in which I express disgruntlement with the conditionalities that we had to meet in order to borrow money from the West. But now, I'm not trying to say that everything is roses because we have a new entrant from whom we can borrow. There are issues of debt. There are issues of the cost of debt that we have to grapple with. But I want to say, really, that if China was not on the scene, I don't think we'd be buried in Karuma Dam. That would not be possible. As Minister of Finance, I don't remember getting a loan bigger than $500 million from the West. Of course, we struggled for 10 years to get $800 million to build Bujagali. 10 years to be able to raise the $800 million. And during that time, we suffered enormous energy shortages. We paid very, very high costs for energy, which was generated by burning oil. It was a very high cost for Uganda. So I think that, Your Excellency, I want to say that we should and we do welcome China's willingness to provide alternative sources of capital, alternative sources of infrastructure. And I think on these lines, I believe we are cooperating very well. And as you indicated earlier, with the Kampala Expressway and Karuma and the Simba, and I would add the fertilizer factory in Tororo is extremely important for us as an agricultural country. In fact, the whole region of East Africa, I believe this is the only fertilizer factory which we had wanted to build for a long time, but we were not able to because we couldn't find the funding. But now this factory is being built. And so I want to contend that the entry of China into the global economic arena brings us opportunity for alternative financing and alternative option for infrastructure. Now, Your Excellency, I would like to say on trade, yes, the BRI is about increasing trade in the line of historical Silk Road, but we have a long way to go to achieve balanced trade. We are importing in excess of $1 billion from China, but last time I checked, we were only exporting $30 million to China. This is too little. So the trade is not balanced, and we need your help to balance the trade. We need your help to balance the trade. It's not easy. The last time I tried to send some samples to your country, they were destroyed. I didn't know why. They said they did not meet the requirements. I thought I had met the requirements. But on the brighter side, I've been to your country in July and in November, and we've had some promising negotiations concerning coffee export, which is one of our most important exports. So we are hoping that Uganda will access the Chinese market, which is, I believe, the fastest growing market for coffee. And this will be good for us, and we hope that we can access your market on good terms. I think this will be extremely encouraging to us as a country. So we believe that also under the FOCAC arrangement, provision of funding is there to increase our exports to China and to finance more and medium enterprises in Uganda to export to China. We don't always find the mechanisms easy, but of course the world is not an easy place. But the fact that the funding is provided means that in the course of time, we should be able to access this funding and to improve our ability to export to China. And I think that this would be very, very important, not only for coffee, but also other products which we've been discussing, cotton, simsim, and so on, cassava. I think that there are good opportunities, and these young people who are looking for employment, are looking for economic activity to uplift themselves, will be eagerly looking forward to accessing this market and improving economic opportunities in our country. We welcome the wonderful work you've done in Djibouti, in Ethiopia. I'm told in Ethiopia that a journey which used to take, I think, 3 days now takes only 12 hours to go to the coast. In Kenya, the standard gauge railway reaching Nairobi has also reduced the travel from 12 hours to 4.5 hours. And you already mentioned about our Entebbe Expressway. So we believe that your presence in infrastructure in Africa is a positive development, and I think we should welcome the fact that we have this opportunity to work with you to improve our infrastructure development. So, I already mentioned the debt problem. We hope that we can have negotiations or discussions that will not put us into too much debt, more than we can handle. It's tempting to go into too much debt. When I would be negotiating loans with multilateral institutions, it could take me 2-3 years to negotiate a debt, one debt. With China, 3 months is probably more than enough to negotiate a major debt. So you are much faster in concluding the debts, but this may lead us to overdo it and take on more than we can handle, and that's not good. So I hope that we will be careful so that we don't become overburdened with debt more than we can repay. It's up to us, of course, in some of these negotiations. Ideally, for example, the standard gauge railway should be a regional project. And indeed, before Uganda Railway, as it was called, was a regional project. But Kenya has negotiated alone and gone ahead. We are negotiating alone and hoping to bring the railway, and I suppose Sudan and Congo, they are also interested. But in the interest of our people, I think that because there's an issue of the balance of power, How does Uganda negotiate with China? We are so small and China is so big that there is need for us to act regionally, East African community, for example, so that we also can increase our bargaining power. I think that's an important point that hopefully we shall consider. So, there is a need, as I conclude, there is a need to engage China to learn the strategies that they have used to achieve unprecedented speed in the history of economic development. For example, it should be evident by now that effective economic planning is essential. In the past, we prided ourselves in being a mixed economy. We prided ourselves in being private sector led. Yes, it has helped, but I believe that we can do better and we can go faster by embracing effective planning. And I think we can learn from China to do effective planning, and I mean, their achievement is undeniable. In the last 24 years, they have gone from I don't know which number to become the second largest economy in the world. So we have a lot to learn from them, and I think we should. And the world is changing. The global economic relations are changing. His Excellency cited the 2008 global financial crisis and the way that it changed economies of the world. So I hope that we are moving into a more balanced world economically, and in this world we will learn to balance ourselves properly, strategically, so that we can achieve maximum growth, but without losing our freedom. We want to achieve economic relations, good economic relations. We want to achieve speedy growth, but we also want to make sure that we maintain our freedom. We have a history of colonialism and neo-colonialism, which we are trying to shake off. And we hope that as we move into the future, we'll move into faster economic development, but also along with economic freedom and political freedom. So I thank His Excellency, the Ambassador, for his remarks, and I look forward to the discussion and continued discussions in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chancellor, sir. A round of applause to our Chancellor. And today he's here to discuss and to work with us. Mr. Chancellor, sir, we are so happy that today is not about the graduation, where we have to be through the normalities, Mr. Chancellor, sir. But today you are here to work with us, and we thank you so much. He's bringing with him the expertise in economics. I think now we are on page. The RBI is something that is very common with us. As we organize to move into the second session, His Excellency gave us the assurance that, okay, why don't we greet one another? And at least afford to have a smile with your neighbor and say hi. Ni hao, just say ni hao. When you say ni hao, and everybody will be okay. Just that will be okay for you. And for those of you who can afford to see Daja hao, then you can do that. That you're all welcome. That's what it is. I hope, Your Excellency, I'm on track. Thank you very much. So at this minute, I'll take the pleasure to invite the panelists, and first where I'll invite the principal of the College of Humanities and Social Science, Professor Josephine Ahikire, who will move gently up here to take on the role of the moderator. Why don't we cheer her up as she moves up here? This long lady. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, and that's going to be our moderator. And next in line that I'll invite here to come is none other than, we have the gender balance, don't worry. Now I'll be inviting Dr. Godfrey Akleng, and this is the Dean of Business in the Cobhams Makerere University. He's also a happy man. You've got to cheer him up as he moves up here. That is Dr. Akleng. And next now, I'll invite Dr. Maggie Chigozi, who is a business consultant and who has worked with us all time. Anytime you would want her, she'll be here. Dr. Maggie, you're welcome. As you move up here, you'll be cheered by the people here because they're so excited to see you. And finally, I'll be inviting Engineer Ayub Soma. Karibu sana. So please join in here, and please let's welcome him as well. I just want to explain the rules of the games. That will be very simple in the interest of time, because we are okay now. We'll be writing down the questions, and those questions will be picked by our members here. They'll be picking these questions, and they'll be coming to the moderator, and she will ably handle that section. This session, I just want to say that it's going to take us only only 40 minutes, and then finally here, as we move into taking that, I want to invite the Chief Discussant, Mr. Chancellor, sir, to join us here, because yours join us here again, because we love to have you here, because today the day is ours, you gave it to us, and we just want to see you here. We enjoy seeing you here. And now here comes our Chancellor up here to join us. I also want to invite His Excellency Zhuqiang, because you've done a great deal of this explanation. Please join us in this colorful ceremony and be right up here, Your Excellency. We're going to cheer this up. This is so rare to have them around, but today they are ours. And now, I just want to, as they take the seat, right. So this is a house for generating ideas, and here we are going to discuss. I also just want to mention that Dr. Deus, you can stand up for recognition. This is the Chair of Academic Staff Association, and I want to thank our Vice Chancellor for organizing this, and your members are all here. Thank you. I now take this opportunity to invite our moderator, Professor Josephine Ahikire, to take over in this session, which is going to take us only 40 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our Master of Ceremony, the Right Honorable Prime Minister, here represented by Honorable Grace Kwiuchui, the Minister of State for Northern Region, Northern Uganda. You're very welcome to this very important engagement. Your Excellency, the Ambassador of the People's Republic of China to Uganda, welcome to Makerere University. Our Chancellor, Professor Ezra Suruma, welcome. The Vice Chancellor, Professor Barnabas Nawangwe. honorable members of parliament present, members of the University Council, principals, deans, heads of departments, all members of staff, students, all visitors to Makerere University, you're welcome to this very important conversation around the Belt and Road Initiative and looking at its opportunities and maybe also the preparedness of Africa as a continent. As a moderator, I'm not going to say much, but I was intrigued by the ending statement of His Excellency the Ambassador, who said that winter is a sign that spring is around the corner. For us here, seasons are the same. But when one compares winter with spring, you know that the other one is rainy, it is cold, it is gray, it is everything. But actually, that is the time that animals and plants prepare for the next season. So, in a way, you are alerting us to preparedness, to take on the challenges and opportunities presented by this very important global initiative and an important role that alternative modes of development can lead us, as the Chancellor has alerted us to the fact that as of now we have an opportunity to look at alternative modes of doing things, of development. And as Africans, as Ugandans, this is an opportune time for us. And I was also glad to hear things about ancient wisdom that brings in the issue of learning from history, from our history, learning from our experiences, even of colonialism and of what has happened in the post-independence era. And also to learn about the fact that you're talking about an initiative that brings resources, peoples, cultures, and ideas together as a globe to solve or address our collective global challenges. So, as the discussant, Professor Suruma, was talking and saying, now I'm wiser, I think we can say now we are a wiser community with regard to the Belt and Road Initiative. Thank you, Your Excellency. So, our panel, I'm going to start with Dr. Maggie Chigozi. She's a medical doctor and has worked in several countries, Zambia, Kenya, Uganda, and has been also a director of the Uganda Investment Authority. So that's a key role that she has played in our country. She was a director at one point of Crown Beverages, which we call Pepsi in our popular language. She is the chair of the Global Fund Uganda. She also chairs Akina Mama wa Africa, which is a women's rights organization. And she is the director of Twado Mvule East Africa. There are so many other things. If I wanted to read the CV of Dr. Chigozi, would need another public lecture. She's been instrumental in discussions around SDGs and was a champion and a global champion for goal number 5. So she's a medical doctor recreating herself in so many ways. And as of now, I'm going to ask you a question around the role of the private sector. In your experience, what should be the role of the private sector in this initiative of Belt and Road? What kinds of things should we envisage to see, and what kind of efforts should the private sector in Uganda be putting in place? Thank you. You're welcome to Makerere University first.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Josephine. Can you hear me? I want to start by saying I am so happy to be in the main hall of Makerere and to see it shining like this. Congratulations. I sat over there, the gentleman in the blue shirt, when I was doing my exams. I danced very often, I must say. I danced every Saturday night, probably, in the main hall. But, Your Excellency, thank you so much for sharing with us this initiative by China. And I think you are sharing because you think we can benefit from it, but also we can duplicate something similar. China is very, very big. So your advantage we may not have is the huge domestic market. So what has Uganda done is to combine East Africa to broaden our market, to go into COMESA, and now we have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area ready to partner with China more together. The role of the private sector is critical, and I think even in China, you have shared with us, they needed to have infrastructure in place in order to attract foreign direct investment and domestic investment in China. And that's what we have needed to do, and my minister will confirm that we tried very hard to put in place industrial parks all over the country so that it's easy for manufacturers to set up. Namamve was the one. We also tried infrastructure. We needed, the private sector needs infrastructure. I think the biggest problem, which now government has sorted, thank you very much, is energy. With a lot of support from the Chinese investors, as we had today, we now have energy. It's no longer an issue in most parts of the country. Now it's distribution that's a problem, but we have energy. We also needed roads. You've heard about the railway in the belt. Fantastic railway. How many hours to get from China to Europe? Very few hours. Only about 8 hours. Can you imagine? It's even faster than going by plane. And we have started, we are happy to report that the standard gauge railway on the Nairobi side is moving towards Kampala and then to Rwanda and others. So to the private sector, we need those in place in order to succeed. Right now, and you heard from His Excellency, the manufacturing sector is picking up. I'm happy to report. Many Chinese, we talked about the tiles, but also many other investors all over the country. Infrastructure is critical for tourism. Private sector is investing in tourism. I think what you are going to ask is, are they investing in the infrastructure they need? And I'm happy to say yes. From China, Huawei has invested in ICT. All of you are now connected to everyone else on social media because our private sector, in this case, Huawei and MTN and all the others, have invested in ICT. And that is also enabling the rest of you who are in other sectors to do business. So private sector is beginning to invest in roads, if we can have tolls, is beginning to invest in industrial parks, and you heard about 6 from the Chinese, Kapeka and Mbale and others. We have always looked towards government to expect infrastructure for industrial parks. But as we can see, yes, we are still doing ours, Namave and Ruzira and others, but you can see the Chinese are already moving ahead. Private sector investing in the infrastructure. Indians investing in warehousing. So yes, the private sector will benefit, is a big beneficiary of the Belt and Road Initiative, but they also get opportunities to either do construction, to do production, to supply. So it is a two-way thing. And as Uganda, we are learning from China, and we can do the same. And young people, women, and disabled and others are also having a different opportunity of being educated. In my time, I think Professor Nawangwe, you might remember, but you are not quite my time, but I don't know who will remember, maybe Professor Suruma. Only about 1% of us achieved university education. And now here you are. I think we have, Makerere is huge, and we have about 60 other. So education is a big plus that our young people have. One thing they lacked, in 1989, I think, government decided we would be a private sector-led economy. That the private sector would drive this economy. But it has taken us 20 more years for you to come up and realize you are the ones to make a difference. It's got to be you. Don't wait for the government. Don't look for a job. You can start your own business. Start small and grow. Get the skills. There are programs. Makerere, of course, has loads and loads of programs, but so do other institutions on skilling Ugandans. I am a medical doctor. That has not tied my hands. It's not just the injection I do. I went to the private sector. I was there for 6 years. I went to government. I headed the Uganda Investment Authority for 12 years. Now, I am a farmer. I still produce Pepsi. Josephine sort of implied that I wasn't there. I am still there. So, to you, the young people, open your eyes. There are opportunities in every sector. There are opportunities in agriculture, opportunities in tourism. There are opportunities, you are smart guys, in the services. You can do ICT, software production, no, you name it. Education. People are making loads of money. If you see St. Lawrence has 5 schools, if you see Victoria's has also, I think, 4 schools, why do you think they're doing that? Because schools make money. You have the educational background. My message to the youth especially, the very educated youth that we have, but also those who are less educated, they're skilling. Uganda has a program called Skilling, which gives you to be a carpenter, to be a welder, so let us speak on those. Look at the freedom that government has brought in to do your own business, to improve the investment climate for you, to provide you with infrastructure. And let's go and do it. Thank you, Josephine.
Thank you very much. Dr. Akireng Godfrey. You are a scholar, and as Dean of School of Business, College of Business and Management Sciences, you are in the business of creating knowledge which can be deployed by the population, different categories of populations, to take advantage or to direct development. I'm sure the university librarian, Dr. Helen Biamjisha, you can stand for recognition, is waiting to catalog the knowledge that is coming out of us as we engage with these initiatives. So Dr. Kileng, as a scholar, what is your take on the Road and Belt Initiative? What kinds of opportunities do you envisage? But most importantly, what role should scholars at Makerere University, in Uganda, in the region, in Africa, what role should they play as opposed to just being consumers? What role in terms of being proactive should they play? Welcome.
Thank you very much, Josephine, for that wonderful question. It's a tough question, but let me try to unlock it. Sometime last year, Makerere University gave me the opportunity to... Can you hear me? Yes, sometime last year, Makerere University gave me the opportunity to visit China to interact with the China Africa Institute, which is an institute under the China Academy of Social Sciences, in a discussion on the BRI and African integration and the role of scholars and generally policymakers, and of course to inform us about the BRI. And to answer your question specifically, there is a lot that we scholars can do to take advantage of these opportunities. I can first of all just dwell on the China Africa Institute. And Josephine, you will be a main beneficiary on this as students of social science. There are discussions that can bring Africa and China in terms of research on policy issues that His Excellency was talking about. People-to-people engagement, cultures, and other issues, and collaborative research and publications in all different areas, but particularly also in infrastructure, in economics, in social sciences, and also the China Africa Institute working with the African scholars can develop a hub to train high caliber talent or professionals. So we as a university should be able to tap into this as soon as possible. And as your representative at that meeting, we already started a serious conversation on this, and opportunities for joint research are beginning to take shape. On top of that, there are issues that we could be talking about. I could be talking about this from the business school point of view, on training and teaching and learning. The business schools, we have already a Master of Public Infrastructure Management, which is a regional master's program. By the time we designed this in 2012, we did not have an idea that we shall be having the BRI initiative. But the idea in 2012, when we designed it together with our partners, the Pan-African Capacity Building Program, was that Africa is rich with initiatives that help in development of infrastructure across the region, but maintenance and management of that infrastructure becomes a problem. And across Africa, we have 3 training centers, for which Makerere University is one of them, and the other one is Pretoria and University of Senegal, Dakar. Now, within that program that we train, we have visits to places of centers of excellence in infrastructure management. We take our students to learn by doing in some of these places in South Africa and even locally in Uganda. We have had an opportunity to visit some of the sites that His Excellency was talking about with our students. In that way, we believe that we are getting an opportunity in terms of knowledge transfer, because we train not just only engineers, but we train policymakers and a majority of other people in that particular program. Now, we have also integrated the BRI in our training program, especially for the finance students. And we are asking them to interrogate some of those issues that the Chancellor was talking about. Is the BRI a panacea for example, Uganda's development? Is it the end result? Are there opportunities? Are there alternatives to this kind of financing? Don't forget that it comes with a burden of debt, like Professor was talking about. Can we model that into our economic development? There was a question Professor Suruma actually asked. This forms part of our discussion. Not long ago, China was probably one other country. There's a shared history between China and most of African countries. But how have they been able to jump that to be among the top economies in the world? And how can Uganda learn in terms of that? But of course, also as scholars, there are questions that we ask, especially for Uganda, in terms of this relationship, partnerships, entrepreneurship, for example. What can our local entrepreneurs, good enough, Professor Chigozi is here, learn from the Chinese entrepreneurs? And what kind of partnership can we have? It's a good idea to have many, the 6 industrial parks in this country of Chinese companies. But then what about the local entrepreneurship? Can we have also a 50-50, 30-70, 40-60 partnership so that we can learn together? There are, of course, issues that Professor Suruma talked about on public investment, our capacity to absorb that magnitude of public investment, but very importantly also to manage it once it is put in place. Studies to that extent should be done. Thank you.
These panelists deserve a bigger clap. Thank you. We are what they call economists heavy, because we already have 2 economists on this panel, and I would not want to risk to ask an economic question. But I'm going to try. As a lay person, we hear you economists talking about cost-benefit analysis. And in my language, I'm going to say net benefit analysis. Can you help us to unpack what this would mean if we engage that kind of analysis?
Wow, interesting. I think my senior will unpack it better than me, Professor Suruma. But in as far as the BRI is concerned, I think you are asking a question to say, what do we benefit more than the cost of it? Of course, as a country, we benefit first through trade that we are already talking about. His Excellency talked about 5 very important connectivities. We could be talking about trade, but like Professor Suruma said, if the statistics he gave, there's a question already on balance of what? Balance of trade. So what is the net benefit there? Because China, we are importing 1 billion, and we are only exporting a paltry $30 million. So you can already calculate yourself and say either there's a net benefit or no net benefit in that. But it also comes with other opportunities, because probably what we import we are not able to produce locally, and so we can be able to consume the other side. But also in terms of cost of debt and finance, of course China is giving us capital, yes, but there is a worry in terms of the cost of it, not just in the short term, but also in the long run. Already probably our government is grappling with a huge debt figures. Of course, some people are saying it has not yet reached a level where we should be worried, but it's a cause of worry also. But in the end, once we have put this infrastructure in place, is it going to give us a net benefit? I should say yes, to a greater extent. Like Professor Chigoza said, you can now be able to reach the airport at the shortest time. You save, out of 3 hours, you're saving 2.5 hours. In terms of growth, economic growth, of course, we are now able to have made in Uganda, products produced in Uganda by Chinese companies, made in Uganda, and we can be able to sell within our economy and also sell in the region. To that extent, there is some bit of benefit, but we should not completely discount some of the costs that it can come up with. But I'm happy to say this. I read in the newspapers today, His Excellency the President is suggesting that our borrowing should be restricted to specific sectors, that probably that we cannot be able to finance locally. Maybe that, and specifically infrastructure. But I'm sure my senior will be able to unlock this better.
Thank you very much. Engineer Soma Ayubu. They say opportunities come dressed in an overall, and they bypass, and you look at them later and say, oh, was that an opportunity? It looked like work. The engineer is a director, Airports and Aviation Security, Uganda Civil Aviation Authority. Chairman, Uganda-China Friendship Association. He's also director, Luyanzi Institute of Technology, Confucius Classroom. And we are happy to note that he's an alumnus of Tsinghua University, Beijing, China. So we are going to hear from the person that has interfaced directly with some of these signposts. So, engineer, in your work experience in civil aviation, but also in these other roles that you're playing, what kind of spring should we prepare for? You know, sometimes people prepare for spring and it rains all the time. And you say, we were expecting sunshine. So what kind of preparedness should we have as a country, as a continent? And can you give us some of the projects that are being spearheaded in this regard? Welcome to Makerere University.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would want to appreciate the public lecture today delivered to us by His Excellency the Chinese Ambassador and the Chief Discussant. Yes, I want to begin answering your question from the history and the little knowledge that I know about China. First of all, China China's strength comes from its strong history and culture. And it is driving on this one, that even when they had their revolution to chase away, of course, the capitalists, it has continued to preserve its history and culture. And this is a major advantage that very many countries are lacking. Because of that, China knew what they wanted, and therefore they started to reserve their resources for the next generation. That means that even during their most difficult times, their most hard times, they still had to sacrifice themselves to preserve for the next generation. This is what we start by creating the opportunities. Also, on top of that, Chinese leadership and governance is deliberate. It is not by chance. It's not by chance. It is leadership that it is through generations. It is leadership that has been identified through cadre identification and deployment. So all this is a strategic vision to what they are receiving today. And because of that, every generation leadership comes with a theme. Whereas it emphasizes and supports the past one, but it comes with a new theme. That is why today, the generation of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of China, the People's Republic of China, Xi Jinping, comes with a new theme, which we are discussing today, of One Belt, One Road initiative. It is not by chance that this initiative he has come with. It was built, that is why it dates as long as the time of the Silk Road, when people were still using the horses. Now all this is deliberate. So when you see somebody in China is appointed a president or becomes a president or is a chairman of whatever, it is all deliberate and carefully done. It's not like here that even tomorrow Engineer Soma will start campaigning for presidency. You have no background, you have no what, you even don't know the systems, but you are there. This is what distorts some of what we are doing. Therefore, China, because of that, has developed its robust leadership in order to oversee the strategic development of its communities, agriculture infrastructure, industrial capacity, education and health, financial capacity, political and social capacity, among many, in order to generate its strong resource base that has even surpassed, that has even got surplus to share with other countries like us. All this has been done as a deliberate move. So, what is the opportunity for us? One is that we need to learn from this, that leadership and governance of a country is not by chance. It should be deliberate. That is very important to note. And therefore, the coming in of this kind of initiative is one thing that is an opportunity that has come. Now the question will be, how have we made the strategy in order for us to benefit from these opportunities? How are we prepared? Yes, they are telling us we have got 6 industrial parks. We have got hydropower plants. We have got express highway. We have got, now there is the upgrade and expansion of Entebbe International Airport, where I'm seated, and so many others. But how are we strategically going to benefit from this? In order for us to manage our economic transformation, we need to have a deliberate cadre training, such that we can manage whatever is coming in order for us to take up the opportunity. But otherwise, we will have many of these infrastructures, and many of the people will say, but we are getting, all these are coming through loans. It's going to be a crisis. Why do you get a loan that you have not made a visibility study? It has no economic viability. Why? Because that will only come when it means that you have got into a project that you do not see that it will be able to return the investment. And that is very dangerous. Therefore, for us to look at and to tap on the opportunities, one is that now we must agree, first of all, to sacrifice for the next generation. We must agree to plan for the next generation. And how should we do that? The Chinese and these industrial parks are coming. We are educating our children. They are coping up with the technology. We must also make them get the Chinese people to work with them. Therefore, we must make them learn the language. We must make them learn the language in order to have a coexistence. And also that will increase the people-to-people friendship. It will further enhance trade. And when you look at all that, it will result into what we call economic transformation. But above all, is we must be ready to prepare and sacrifice for the next generation. Thank you very much.
I hope you've heard the word sacrifice. I'm going to ignore that one and take the word opportunities. Thank you very much. In the interest of time, would have loved to have a further discussion because there are so many interesting things that the panelists have mentioned. But because of time, we are not able to do that. A round of applause for our panelists. Your Excellency, the Ambassador, there are some questions that have been raised by members in the audience. One of them is around the worry about excessive borrowing. Does China have a policy framework in place to curtail development countries from excessive borrowing? Because that becomes a cost to the countries and it's the future generations that will pay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Should I give you two questions, maybe?
The debt burden or overborrowing is a very old topic. And according to the statistics displayed by government, and according to the statistics we have, it's not true. And China lent some loans to African countries, and those countries, in order to realize their development, they hope to find some more finance to support their projects. I think it's first, the nature of this cooperation is South-South cooperation. And China provide, most of the loans from China are soft loans. And when China lend loans to other countries, we focus on two things. One is the repayment capability. Another focus is on the project efficiency. If the project cannot produce enough feedback, and that means it's not worth to invest in this individual project. And some sayings from outside, they say China increased the debt burden of some countries. And actually, yes, some countries have some problem with their debts, but none of the crises are created by China. According to the statistics released by the government, China's loans to this country only account for a small part of Uganda's international debt. And most of China's loans only account for only 15% of this country's debt burden. And all the loans provided by China are long-term soft loans. A small part of it are commercial loans. Commercial is commercial. And for development loan, most of them are concessional, very low interest loans. So I don't think, first I must say, Uganda is not on the verge of over debt. And second, I want to say, China's loans are only account for a small part of the international debt of Uganda. And China also pay attention to this situation. China is very, very cautious. Before providing loans, China will be very, very cautious first to see this country's capability to repay, and second, to see the individual, the loan, the projects which will use China's loans, to see if this project can sustain itself. If this project cannot sustain itself, China will not provide. So it's our principle. It's our principle. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Ezra Suruma, you are a seasoned economist. You've worked in government, and now you're Chancellor of our premier university, Makerere University. What do you think will happen to Uganda? They want you to be a prophet. You mentioned something about neocolonialism. Don't you think such an initiative or similar initiatives risk to take over our economy? That's a question for me.
Thank you very much. I'm saying that we have to act with due caution when we are incurring debt, when we are entering into international contracts. We should do, as my brother here said, do feasibility studies and satisfy ourselves that the projects we are undertaking are worthwhile and they will generate sufficient revenues in the future to justify those debts. I agree that in many cases we are not as thorough as we should be. And I call upon everyone concerned to do due diligence, to be more thorough in analyzing the projects and making sure that any debt, any undertaking is justified. I have to say there are cases when not enough work is being done to understand what we are undertaking. And years later, we say, oh, we should have done better. We didn't do enough analysis. I think, I don't know if it was Vice Chancellor who talked about a think tank. A think tank would be helpful where some of these projects could be brought, and the think tanks could look over them and advise. Because often government doesn't have time. Bureaucrats don't have time. And sometimes they are corrupt. So if we have a place where some serious thinking is being done and they're taking time to analyze, this could be complementary to the efforts we are undertaking. Some of the things are very complex. We don't understand the technologies. We don't fully understand the terms that we're entering into. Sometimes we don't even understand the products that are going to be manufactured. So there's a need to be more thorough so that 10, 15, 20 years from now, we don't look back and say that we made mistakes and it's too late to get out of these undertakings. So that would be I don't know if I'm answering the question, but I think that there's a need for Uganda to be more thorough. We are not as thorough as we should be.
That's a challenge to all of us. Your Excellency, the Ambassador, two final questions. One is about environmental concerns. What strategies are in place to mitigate any possible environmental abuses as raised by the BRI initiative? And the other one is about the fact that our economy as Uganda is dominated by the private sector. And so we are wondering, this is a participant wondering how Ugandans will build capacity to manage such a massive initiative, global and so on, when the economy and production is dominated by private investors.
I will try to answer these two questions. First, environment. Environment is very, very important. And according to the lessons we learned from our experience, from our history of industrial development, we learned a lot of lessons. So no matter how great importance you pay attention to the environment, it's not too much. And during the development, especially industrialization, during the course of it, we must pay enough attention to the protection of environment. In China, our lesson is that development cannot take the environment damage as a sacrifice. So while develop ourselves, and we cannot sacrifice environment. So it's our one of the important lessons. And for Uganda, I found President Museveni pay much attention to the environment. Especially the wetland. President Museveni mentioned a lot of times on the invasion of wetland. Today I got something from the newspaper. President said 60% of the rainfall of Uganda comes from Indian Ocean and 40% from the lakes and the wetlands. So my meaning is that in the course of industrialization, we must pay the same attention to the environment protection. And for the second question is the private sector. Private sector is very important. And especially we must give individual people enough freedom. And people are very creative. Individual people are very creative. And if they give them good policies and good economic environment, they can work a miracle. And especially if the private sector's activity or productivity are fully liberated, and I think they can establish their business and make big contributions to the development of this country. So private sector in China, we have a large share, about 80% of our business are private. And the private sector employs 80% or 90% of the labor. All the labor are private, are from the private sector. And the private sector also contribute 60% of the revenue to the country. And the private sector also contribute more than 50% of our exports. So private sector is very, very important. And during for about policy, so government should not only pay attention to big enterprises, both state-owned or non-state-owned, big factories, companies, but also government should pay attention to the small and the medium-sized private business. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for our ambassador. You're always welcome to Makerere University. You've always graced our occasions. Also, we are gratified that we are using this main hall for its intended purposes. Thank you, Vice Chancellor, Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, for facilitating these conversations. This is exactly what we are supposed to do, and as according to our strategic plan, we are supposed to be a thought leader as a university, a thought leader to create knowledge and produce knowledge that will inform society and inform development for broader societal transformation. Thank you, panelists. I now hand over to the MC. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Josephine, for that wonderful moderation. And I think every one of us now is on board with the RBI, and you know it's you, BRI. That's why I had to catch your attention. Every one of us now you can see is here. So you've done a great job. People know it's BRI. It's not the other way around. So thank you so much. And now, we are not going to spend any more minute. I think I have to invite the Vice Chancellor to invite our guest of honor. But as he does that, there are two announcements that His Excellency will receive a plaque from the Vice Chancellor and the Right Honorable Prime Minister together with the Chancellor. And lastly, for the journalists, we'll have a brief interview here. We'll not go anywhere with the panelists, with the Ambassador, the Chancellor and the Vice Chancellor. And lastly, there will be a photograph with the panelists right here. And I think they can stay comfortably there. There's no cause for alarm. Stay calm as the chief guest is invited. Mr. Vice Chancellor.
No, I think we can allow the panelists to take their seats so that they can listen to the chief guest. So I think we have had a wonderful afternoon, and I would like to once again thank the Honorable Grace Kwichwin for coming to be our guest of honor representing the Prime Minister. And so without wasting time, may I take the honor and the privilege to invite you to come and address us and close this lecture, and also will be requesting you, as the MC said, to present a plaque to His Excellency the Ambassador after your speech.
Thank you very much, the Vice Chancellor, Makerere University, Your Excellency, the Ambassador of the People's Republic of China to Uganda, the Chancellor, Makerere University, Professor Ezra Suruma, the members of Parliament present, the university management, the panelists who have given us good information, the students, distinguished guests. I'm happy to be here this evening. The Prime Minister delegated me to be here, and has, in that delegation, therefore empowered me, because I have learned a lot from what the Ambassador has shared with us this evening. Let me take this opportunity to thank the Ambassador, therefore, for delivering this informative public lecture on the Belt and Road Initiative. Also thank Professor Ezra Suruma, as a Ugandan seasoned economist who has understood these things, for giving us the information he has shared. And I hope his discussion has helped us also, as the audience and Ugandans at large, to understand this initiative better. I thank Makerere University for being proactive and initiating and inviting the Ambassador to deliver this lecture to us. I think this is a home-based economy and information. Ordinarily would have traveled up to China in order to understand this. But you can now see this has cut a lot of cost, has saved time, and has given us good information. Ladies and gentlemen, the Belt and Road Initiative of China is the largest project in human history. It is a set to transform the way global trade is done. The countries which will understand this initiative and tap into it at the right time will reap a lot of benefits.